He was hesitant to play God, but he was iconized. So he ran away from the Hollywood hills to the Australian outback.
So I just kind of threw the snake back into the bedroom and shut the door.
Is Chris Hemsworth infatuated with what he does as much as you were infatuated with him? You will find out right now.
Chris Hemsworth.
Who's that?
Thor.
I don't know who Thor is.
Kim, are you alright? He has more than 50 million followers on Instagram. We bet you also didn't know he has a famous uncle, Rod Ansell, who was an inspiration for the world-famous Australian character, the Crocodile Dundee.
2 beers, alright? One for me, one for me mate.
Hemsworth actually has a lot in common with a wild nature wrangler. Just like the Dundee himself, from his early childhood, Chris would hang around crocodiles, buffalo, and the indigenous Australian tribes. When he became rich and famous, he even bought a house in Malibu from the franchise's leading man. Chris was also featured in an Australian tourism campaign in the style of the 80s hit movie.
Brian Dundee?
Yep. Really? Yeah.
The scenic landscapes of Australia were the first to discover Hemsworth's talents, except initially those talents were sewing and cleaning breast milk pumps.
And I literally worked for a pharmacy. They would rent them out, the machines would come back, and I would have a toothbrush, little spray and wipe.
Naturally, he was not going to devote his entire life to this, so from the age of 18, accompanied by his brothers, Luke and Liam, he went knocking on the doors of local production companies. And the strategy obviously paid off for the Hemsworth brothers. All three of them starred in the famous Aussie soap opera Neighbours. But the high point of Chris's career back in his homeland was his work in Home and Away.
Listen, I know how this is going to end, and trust me, it hurts like hell.
The series was sort of an acting school substitute. In just a few seasons, it brought Chris the most popular new male talent award and made it possible for him to step onto the dance floor with the Australian version of Dancing with the Stars. Though while shaking his hips, sexy and young Chris had a clear understanding that TV shows and soap operas will not bring you any real respect in the film industry, yet he continued feeling an obligation to his parents. I remember asking my dad once when he would pay the house off, and he said probably never. That made me angry, and naively I went, well, I'll be a movie star, that'll probably earn some money. Well, Hollywood is the perfect place to make your childhood dreams come true. So in search of new projects, 25-year-old Chris resolved to move to the US. And after only 6 weeks stateside, independent filmmakers fell for his charming looks and deep voice, and the new Thunder from Down Under landed his first leading role in a feature film.
Where did you get it?
Straight from heaven, baby.
Although world recognition would follow later when he appeared in the much-loved Star Trek reboot.
But I was only a small role in it, but that was easily the biggest film I was a part of.
Some critics even called the flashback scene of James Kirk's father at the beginning of the story the best 5 minutes of the entire film.
Let's name him after your dad. Let's call him Jim.
This great success, however, was followed by even greater disappointments. Chris failed to land any castings because he was too anxious about getting a role and helping his family. And just like that, he failed his first audition for Thor. I was like, do it for his house.
We should split up.
Yeah, good idea.
But luckily for Chris, and the rest of us frankly, the film gave him a second chance to become a Marvel hero. Joss Whedon, the film's producer, called his friend Kenneth Branagh, Thor director, and asked him to give Chris one more chance. This time, Chris hesitated.
Just trying to be an artist. I was like, oh, I do independent films, and it's too big, and it's a franchise, and I said,
Apart from the fear of becoming defined by a single role, Chris faced some serious competition. Daniel Craig, Channing Tatum, Thor's brother from another mother, Tom Hiddleston, who later played Loki, all of them were potential candidates for Thor. Even Chris's own brother Liam made it to the top 4.
Well, my manager then said, well, he does have an older brother, which was me. Maybe I had a little more sort of motivation that my little brother had got a look in and I hadn't, and then the rest is history.
The brothers deny any unhealthy rivalry between them and simply call everything they accomplish teamwork. Even Chris's mom, Leonie, helped him working on Thor.
She read Anthony Hopkins' lines and held the camera and did a great performance, and
I said to Anthony, my mum did it a bit different. Yeah.
Teamwork paid off, and Chris signed a contract with Marvel for 6 feature films. The box office total was almost $450 million, and Thor went on to land in the top 10 film hits of 2011. Hemsworth only got $150,000 for the role and worldwide fame, but he seemed completely indifferent to it.
Look how big that is, right? Do you ever just like sneak into town, take a photo and send it to all your mates?
No, I almost drove off the road when I saw that thing.
In 2014, when he earned $34 million, he made it into the top 20 highest paid actors of the year. Of course, the first thing Chris had to do was to fulfill his childhood dream. He paid off his father's debt. Chris called our father and told him to look at his bank account. Is this humble and gorgeous man single? That was the main question millions of young ladies were whispering about. Unfortunately, however, it was a little too late. Chris had already put a ring on it. The love story between him and Spanish model and actress Elsa Pataky unfolded rather swiftly. A year before Thor came out, their accent coach brought them together, and that same year they surprised everyone when they got married.
It just felt right, it just made sense, and there was no great plan to sort of any of it, to be honest. We were on a holiday and then said, why don't we get married too? And then next minute.
Within a year and a half, they already welcomed their first child, a daughter named India, and 2 years later, they had twins, Sasha and Tristan. Elsa is 7 years older than Chris, so in the beginning she was worried he wasn't serious enough about their relationship. But ever the gentleman, Chris took full responsibility for the family. He bought a house for $5 million and covered all the expenses. For that, he had to spend long hours at work. My wife and I fell in love, had kids, didn't really see each other for a few years, then fell back in love. But I feel like I'm at this crucial point in my career. I've just got to set up for longevity or I'll slip off. Chris tried to keep his promise of not becoming a one-role actor, so he agreed to try out numerous experiments.
All right, superstar. Never better, Patrol.
Critics believed his acting in the biographical sports drama Rush is his best work so far. Chris took some pretty big efforts to prepare for this role. To fit into a race car, the almost 6'3" tall actor had to get rid of all of Thor's muscles. To properly portray his character, James Hunt, Chris decided to personally meet the man's real-life friends.
Everyone was like, well, he doesn't look like this, and he speaks like this, and what are you going to do with the accent, and how are you going to walk, and it was like, oh my God, there's the opinions, But then I adopted the thing of, just like he approached life and driving, as did Nikki, which was do it your way.
You won't even be able to recognize Thor in the heart of the sea. A diet of only 500 calories a day helped him lose 30 pounds for the role of a sailor starving after a shipwreck. This was the hardest movie that I've done. It was brutal. I was challenged physically, mentally, and emotionally. The role really tested my commitment to acting.
Father. Don't leave me, Father.
Did you recognize the superhero in that second frame? At the time, the future Spider-Man, Tom Holland, was only auditioning for the role for Marvel Studios, so he bugged Chris Hemsworth with questions, which he does have an excellent way of doing, to which Tom always received polite answers. He's a great role model for me. He's so down-to-earth and really funny. Being funny is definitely Chris's thing. Aside from action and fantasy films like Snow White and the Huntsman, Chris proved himself to be a great fit for comedies too.
Just wanted to make sure you all had everything you needed for the night.
Of course, the Willy was not actually his. Upon receiving the script, he was first of all happy for an opportunity to do something completely different. And it was for that same reason he agreed to join the cast of Ghostbusters.
Kevin, hi, can you answer the phone, please?
I can't, it's in the fish tank.
No, the one on the desk that's ringing, that one.
Oh, that one.
Yep.
Producers rebooted the franchise with a fully female cast, and Chris was ideally suited for the role of their not-so-bright secretary. The actresses were also happy to have a shooting partner like that.
Another addition to the cast, our good friend Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, I mean...
And such a reaction was repeated in every interview.
It's too much.
When asked why he has such an effect on women, Chris replies with a grin.
I don't know.
The time when the actor used it to his advantage is in the past now. Back back when he was still up and coming in Australia. The fame, the parties, the women. It's an age-old story of the young playboy. Still, such a high-caliber star as himself is always connected to love affairs and on-set romances.
Who doesn't flirt with Chris Hemsworth? I flirt with Chris Hemsworth.
Good for you.
Yeah.
You should flirt with Chris Hemsworth.
The gossip first started after viewers witnessed his chemistry with Natalie Portman in Thor. Few people know, however, that in some scenes he was actually kissing his own wife.
My wife's around the corner. Let's get her in. And she's the same height. I won't have to explain to her what I've been doing at work if I'm having to kiss someone else.
Even though Chris does not attempt to flirt in his scene, actresses still find it hard to keep their cool while working with him.
Somehow he doesn't know how to button his shirt up, and it's so distracting.
Tabloids, however, just won't leave him be, even bringing up his marriage and claiming there was trouble in paradise. To this, Chris replied on his Instagram, "Honey, you still love me, right?" Excessive media attention pressured the family to escape down under to Australia.
It was the best decision we'd made. You know, we'd had a great time in LA, but once we had kids, it got pretty hectic.
Instead of pesky cameras and nosy fans, Chris wanted his family's private lives to be disturbed by murderous Australian critters. You know, it gives them peace of mind.
So I just kind of threw the snake back into the bedroom and shut the door. And we don't go in that bedroom anymore.
The family settled in a quiet town on the seashore with just a couple of residents. Before their house was finished, tabloids published aerial images of the mansion, and it exceeded even his US home's, let's just say, not very modest standards. Chris paid $7 million for the private residence, and the construction cost was estimated to be more than $20 million.
I live in a place called Byron Bay, which is another stunning place. Very sort of hippie surf town culture.
Journalists dug up the information that to enjoy nature to the fullest, the Hemsworth family had to clear-cut away about 60 endemic tree species, which allowed them to build a multi-level palace, which locals call the shopping mall or even the factory. Though, to be fair, the home does actually have numerous facilities: 10 bathrooms, a gym, bars, spa room, 50-meter-long pool located on the roof, and even a little zoo, which the kids enjoy so much.
3 donkeys, a dog, a number of fish, a water dragon, 3 guinea pigs, 3 rabbits, 4 rabbits actually.
The interior is still a bit of a mystery to the public, but word got out that the design highlights include Thor's hammers, which decorate even the bathrooms.
Often people stay in there a little longer, and I think it's because of the hammer. Or, well, I don't know.
It was in Australia that Chris Hemsworth managed to bring Thor back to life. Even though the second film was a failure, the third film was blessed by indigenous Australian tribes, as requested by the film's director, Taika Waititi, and Chris himself.
How far were you from where you live?
About 45 minutes.
Whether it was Australian magic or Hemsworth's new image and bold jokes, Ragnarok became the 9th most successful film in 2017, and Chris received at least $15 million for the role.
6 months shooting a movie and mucking around with your mates is the best way to go to work, if you can even call it that.
When it comes to family, Chris does get very sentimental. He could rent a whole cinema theater for all his relatives just to show off his new work.
I can sort of slam everyone in the cinema and, you know, I meet up with everyone. It's great.
Another thing he did was being the only photographer at his brother's wedding with Miley Cyrus. Then, after their divorce, Chris was Liam's biggest supporter and even helped him build a house next door. In 2019, he took a break from acting to be a superhero for his own kids. By now, you must be thinking, gosh, he is perfect. Maybe he really was meant to play the god who was sent to Earth for the love of his people. But who actually made Chris Hemsworth who he is?
My parents, I guess, for putting this together.
Chris's dad is a child social worker, and his mom is an English teacher. They instill traditional family values and freedom from prejudice in their sons. And Australia saved the actor from being starstruck, as it's not common there to be wrapped up in money and status. This is called tall poppy syndrome. You aren't really allowed to feel good about what you've achieved. You've got to hide that sense of pride. Otherwise, people remind you very quickly that you're getting ahead of yourself. As a result, even now, at the peak of his career, Chris remains shy during interviews, just as he was at his humble beginnings.
Okay.
Nowadays, you'll rarely see him at a raging party, preferring to live his childhood dream life, spending time on the beach, surfing, and taking road trips with his family in their truck.
I just love that however big of a star you get, you're still a down-to-earth guy. And, you're still a good dude.
By the age of 40, while his net worth reached $130 million already, Chris still talks about his desire to slow down more and more often. He spent more than 10 years doing never-ending shoots and traveling. Now he is in search of the perfect work-life balance. He has become more picky about the roles he chooses and has found alternative sources of income.
Are you all tucked up in bed? Feeling warm and comfortable?
Apart from the million-dollar ad campaigns, the family profited from their own fitness app, Center, which Chris launched together with his wife. Fan favorites are the actor's affirmations and meditations, during which everything seems to go wrong. Since 2020, Chris has been a stunt teacher. When his wife made an epic comeback to action films after giving birth, Chris helped her master some new moves.
Just showing me on how you have to do it, what is the right, position that you have to have. Like, he's been done it for like a long time, so it was great having him. And
the truth is that even with a huge mansion, million-dollar Netflix and Marvel deals, fancy cars, and luxury trips, Chris Hemsworth never lost his true self. He still lives by his personal mantra:
just enjoy the ride while you can.
And have fun at full blast. Would you like to try living like Chris? What do you love about him the most? Let us know in the comments. If you like our video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to click on the bell.